Imagine you're a young figure skater, fresh off a competition and boarding a plane back home to D.C. It's supposed to be routine, but then tragedy strikes. Mid-air collision. Your plane plummets into the icy Potomac.
And this isn't hypothetical, right?
This was the reality for 64 passengers.
Yeah.
Those young athletes, their coaches.
3 soldiers on a training mission in a Black Hawk helicopter.
67 lives. Intertwined in a split second.
Just like that.
We're diving deep into this recent plane crash in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Piecing together what happened from all the news reports flooding in.
What's so gripping about these early reports is they just paint this picture of chaos and urgency. You see the frantic search and rescue efforts, the somber mood at the White House briefing, President Trump offering condolences. But amidst all of this raw emotion, you also see the seeds of a complex investigation beginning to sprout.
Yeah. It's a story that goes far beyond Twisted Metal, right?
Right.
It's about those 67 lives, families left behind, and the ripple effects. Those first responders, working tirelessly in the icy waters of the Potomac, searching for survivors for answers. And then the investigators, like those at the NTSB, starting their painstaking work, piecing together what went wrong.
You're absolutely right. Multi-layered story. And we're going to try to unpack it all for you. So let's start with the basics. Around 9 p.m. local time, an American Airlines CRJ 700, flight number 5342.
Flight 5342.
Collided with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter. Think about it. This is Reagan National Airport, one of the busiest in the country. The plane was on its final approach. Suddenly, collision, both aircraft plunging into the river.
One of the things that struck me in these reports was, the mention of a single air traffic controller managing both helicopters and ED planes in that sector at the time.
Yeah.
Now, it's not technically against, FAA guidelines.
Right.
But even their preliminary report called it not normal.
Mm.
Makes you wonder if the sheer volume of traffic at Reagan National might have played a role.
It's definitely something investigators are going to be looking at. And this is where you get into this whole idea of that Swiss cheese model of accident causation.
The Swiss cheese model.
Yeah. You see this crash, like many accidents, might be a case of the Swiss cheese model in action.
Correct.
Each hole represents a potential weakness, maybe staffing levels, maybe communication issues, perhaps even just a moment of human error.
Okay.
Individually, these holes might not be a problem, but when they align, disaster.
It's a chilling thought, but an important one. It reminds us that accidents are rarely caused by a single factor, but rather a confluence of events.
Right, a complex web that investigators need to untangle.
And as they begin to unravel that web, the black boxes, right, those flight data and cockpit voice recorders, they become absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. Think of these black boxes as a flight's autobiography. They spill all the secrets of those final moments. The pilot's conversations, any potential mechanical issues, the interactions with air traffic control, they hold the key to understanding what happened in those crucial seconds before the impact.
And thankfully, they've already been recovered, transported to the NTSB lab.
That's right.
Which is huge for the investigation.
Yeah, they're meticulously analyzing every bit of data, every sound recorded, hoping to extract those critical clues. But as we wait for those findings, there's another layer to the story we can't ignore, the political one.
You're referring to President Trump's comments about air traffic control staffing and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, right?
Exactly. He speculated that lower hiring standards under previous administrations might be a factor, although it's important to note that's just speculation, not a proven fact.
Yeah.
And then there's the issue of DEI programs.
Yeah.
He recently moved to end those within the aviation sector.
Right.
Imagine you're a young woman and dream of becoming a pilot. DEI programs aim to make sure you have the same opportunities as anyone else, regardless of your background.
Right.
But there are strong arguments on both sides of this debate, as you can imagine.
It's definitely a complex issue and one that's adding another layer of scrutiny to this already tragic event. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out as the investigation unfolds.
Absolutely. But let's not forget the human element at the heart of this. You have
Right.
the young figure skaters, the coaches who dedicated their lives to the sport, the families left behind. Just heartbreaking.
Yeah, and even the Kremlin issued condolences, highlighting the international reach of this loss.
Exactly.
It's those individual stories that make this crash so much more than just a news headline.
Absolutely.
And we'll dive deeper into those stories and the ongoing investigation in the next part of our deep dive. As we dig deeper into this, human side of this story, one thing that keeps coming to mind is the sheer range of emotions people must be going through right now.
Oh, absolutely.
You have families grappling with this sudden loss, friends and communities in shock.
Yeah.
And then you have those first responders, the investigators, working tirelessly at the crash site. It's a heavy emotional load for everyone involved.
You're absolutely right. The emotional toll of something like this is just, it's immeasurable. And you see it in these reports, images of tearful families gathering at the airport, vigils being held, and just heartfelt tributes pouring in from all over the world really underscores the human cost of this.
Yeah, in one report, a rescue worker described the scene as heartbreaking and talked about, the challenges of working in those icy waters, knowing that every piece of wreckage they recover could hold the key to someone's story, someone's life.
It takes incredible strength and resilience to do that kind of work, day in and day out, knowing the weight of what they're dealing with. And while they're focused on recovery, the NTSB and investigators are busy trying to, reconstruct the flight, like detectives piecing together a puzzle.
It's a massive undertaking, isn't it? Trying to understand every decision, every action, every factor that might have contributed.
Absolutely. I mean, they're analyzing radar data, air traffic control recordings, weather reports, maintenance logs, you name it. They're even interviewing witnesses on the ground, people who might have seen or heard something relevant.
And as you mentioned earlier, they're also relying heavily on those black boxes.
Right.
The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder.
Yeah.
Like those are like the silent witnesses
Yeah.
to those final moments.
Precisely. You've got the flight data recorder, which is essentially the plane's diary, tracks things like altitude, speed, direction, engine performance, a constant stream of data capturing the plane's every move. And then you have the cockpit voice recorder.
Yeah.
Captures the conversations between the pilots, their communications with air traffic control, any sounds in the cockpit.
It's amazing to think that these little boxes can hold so much information, so much detail about those final moments.
It's a testament to technology, but also to the foresight of those who recognize the importance of capturing this data for investigative purposes.
It makes you wonder what those recordings will reveal. Will they show pilot error, mechanical failure, a miscommunication with air traffic control?
All possibilities.
Well,
And that's what the NTSB is working to determine. But remember, it's rarely one single thing. It's more likely to be a combination of factors, those holes in the Swiss cheese lining up to create this tragic outcome.
right. That Swiss cheese model we talked about earlier, it's both fascinating and unsettling to think about how these seemingly small things can come together to create such a devastating event.
It is, but it's also a really powerful tool for understanding accident causation and preventing future tragedies. By identifying those weaknesses, those holes in the system, we can work to strengthen those areas and make air travel even safer.
So as we wait for the NTSB to release their findings, what are some of the key things you think they'll be focusing on?
Well, based on these initial reports, I think staffing levels at air traffic control will likely be a major area of scrutiny. Was the controller handling too much traffic that night? Were there any communication breakdowns?
And I imagine they'll also be looking closely at the training and experience of both the pilots and the air traffic controllers involved.
Absolutely. Human factors, play a critical role in aviation safety, and investigators will be trying to understand if there were any lapses in judgment, any missed cues, any decisions that might have contributed.
And of course, they'll also be examining the aircraft themselves, looking for any signs of, mechanical failure or malfunction.
Of course. Meticulously combing through the wreckage, analyzing engine components, flight control systems, anything that could have played a role.
It's a daunting task, but crucial.
It is, but it's also an opportunity to learn, to improve, to
Right.
honor those who were lost by working to prevent future tragedies.
Speaking of honoring those lost, those young figure skaters, their coaches, the soldiers on that Black Hawk helicopter.
It's impossible to fathom the pain their families and friends are going through. These were people with dreams, aspirations, loved ones, their lives cut short in an instant. And it's a reminder of the preciousness and fragility of life.
One report I read talked about a young girl on the plane who was traveling with her entire figure skating team. Her parents described her as full of life, always smiling. Breaks your heart to think about the potential that was lost.
It does. And it reinforces the importance of remembering that behind every statistic, every news headline, there are real people with real stories. Their lives mattered.
Absolutely. And while we may never fully understand why this happened, we can honor their memory by continuing to ask questions, to seek answers, and to work towards a future where tragedies like this become even rarer.
Well said.
So we've talked about the victims, the emotional toll of this crash, but let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the broader implications for aviation safety.
You know, as tragic as this is, it's important to remember that, statistically speaking, air travel remains one of the safest modes of transportation.
That's true. But, accidents like this do shake our confidence.
They do. And that's why it's so important to understand the factors that contribute to these events and to learn from them.
So what are some of the key takeaways from this crash?
Well, for one, it highlights the importance of robust air traffic control systems and the need for adequate staffing levels. It also underscores the critical role of human factors in aviation safety and the need for ongoing training and vigilance.
And I imagine it also raises questions about the ongoing debate over DEI programs and their impact on aviation safety.
Yes, definitely a complex issue that deserves further discussion and analysis.
It seems like this crash is going to have a ripple effect on the aviation industry for years to come.
I think that's a fair assessment. Every accident, every investigation leads to new insights, new procedures, new technologies that ultimately make air travel safer for everyone.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the details of the crash, the ongoing investigation, the human impact, and the broader implications for aviation safety. It's been a heavy conversation, but an important one.
I agree. And while there are still many unanswered questions, we hope this deep dive has shed some light on this complex and tragic event.
And as we move to the final part of our deep dive, we want to leave you with some thoughts on what the future of aviation safety might look like in light of this tragedy. It's hard not to wonder, in the wake of all this, what does the future of aviation safety look like? What lessons will we take away from this, and how will they shape the way we fly?
That's the big question. And I think the answer lies in a multifaceted approach. It's about refining the technology, bolstering the human element, and adapting our systems to try to minimize those Swiss cheese scenarios.
Okay, let's break that down. When you say refining the technology, what specifically comes to mind?
Well, think about the black boxes. While they've been instrumental in this investigation, imagine if they were even more advanced.
Okay.
What if they could transmit live data, streaming crucial information in real time? That could give investigators and potentially even air traffic control a much quicker understanding of what's happening during an emergency.
That's fascinating. It's like giving those black boxes a voice, allowing them to speak before a tragedy fully unfolds. Could be a game changer for how we respond to
Well,
incidents.
exactly. And it's not just about reactive measures, right? Advancements in aircraft design, collision avoidance systems, even weather prediction technology all play a role. Imagine a future where planes are equipped with even more sophisticated sensors, capable of predicting and avoiding potential collisions with even greater accuracy.
It's almost like giving the planes a sixth sense, an extra layer of awareness to navigate the skies safely. But as we've talked about, technology is only one part of the equation.
Mm.
The human element remains crucial. And we can't overlook the role of air traffic controllers in this whole complex system.
Absolutely. And that's where advancements in training and support for controllers come in. Imagine simulations that are even more immersive, replicating the pressures and complexities of real-world scenarios. This kind of training could help controllers develop sharper instincts, better decision-making under stress.
And what about the staffing concerns we discussed earlier? How can we address those to ensure that controllers aren't overwhelmed and overworked?
Well, that might involve reevaluating staffing models, potentially increasing the number of controllers on duty during peak hours or in particularly complex airspace. It could also involve exploring some innovative solutions like AI-assisted systems. Those could help controllers manage their workload more efficiently.
So it's about finding that right balance between, human expertise and technological advancement.
Precisely. But there's one more crucial element I think we need to consider, and that's the culture of safety.
Okay, now that's interesting. What do you mean by culture of safety?
It's about fostering an environment where safety is paramount, not just in words, but in actions. It's about encouraging open communication, where pilots, controllers, maintenance crews all feel empowered to report concerns without fear of reprisal. It's about creating a system where everyone feels a shared responsibility for safety.
So it's not just about rules and regulations, but about creating a mindset where safety is truly ingrained in every aspect of aviation.
Exactly. It's about fostering a proactive approach, where potential problems are identified and addressed before they can escalate into accidents.
It's fascinating to think that something as tragic as this crash could ultimately lead to positive change. It's a stark reminder of the importance of continuous improvement, of always striving for better safety measures.
It is, and while there will always be risks associated with flying, we can learn from these tragedies, adapt, and innovate to make the skies as safe as humanly possible.
Well said. This deep dive has been a journey, a somber exploration of a tragic event, but also a look towards the future of aviation safety.
And as we conclude this deep dive, we encourage you to continue reflecting on the lessons we've discussed and to consider your own role in promoting a culture of safety. Whether you're a frequent flyer, an aviation enthusiast, or simply someone who appreciates the wonder of flight.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration. We'll continue to follow the developments in this story and keep you informed. Until next time, fly safe.